Welcome to Discovering. Tonight, part one of a two-part series, a trip to one of the Upper Peninsula's true wilderness gems, Craig Lake State Park.
It's a nice secluded spot to get away. We saw one canoer yesterday, came by the campsite.
We don't hear another sound except for the woods. I mean, we're so far away from the roads, you don't hear another sound except for what is happening normally.
It's one of the prettiest spots in the UP, I think.
That's all tonight, so sit back, put your feet up. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
The Upper Peninsula makes up 29% of the land mass of the state of Michigan, but only 3% of the population resides here. That means a lot of land with no people. Wilderness. Most of us don't have to travel far to find a place that offers solitude. Some places offer more than others. In my search for solitude, I ran across Craig Lake State Park. More than 8,400 acres of uninhabited forests, lakes, and rivers. Michigan's most remote state park. 8,400 acres of solitude. It didn't take long to determine that a trip to Craig Lake State Park was in order. Our journey begins with a night in a yurt, and will end with a canoe trip into one of the park's remote backcountry campsites. 4 days of camping, fishing, hiking, beautiful scenery, and relaxation. 4 days of solitude.
Craig Lake State Park is the most remote state park in Michigan's system. 8,500 acres of woods and wilderness, and most people come out and canoe camp, so you can portage to different lakes. You can backpack, do some backpack camping. We also have some cabins and some yurts available, so it's a place just to explore and get away from it all. I mean, so Fred Miller of Miller Brewing Company, he had a couple of cabins just down the lake here, and they used to come out here, and he actually stocked the fish. He put the muskie in here, and that's where the fishing regulations, the special fishing regulations come from. I guess they just followed those same rules that Fred had put down years and years ago. But tragically, he died with his son flying up here. He had a float plane. From then on, we had, 1,500 acres when Fred passed away. The state was able to get that and turn it into a state park, and now we're up to 8,500 acres. So we kind of expanded. Plenty of room to explore. The road coming in is 7 miles on a single lane road. A little bit rough. Takes a while to get here. I've seen all kinds of different makes of cars out here now, but it used to be four-wheel drive vehicles only, but now we've improved the road a little bit to where most cars can get in here. You just have to be careful. You're a long ways from everywhere, and that just kind of gives you that wilderness feel as the road in. It's just, you just know you're in someplace special. It's worth the trip.
The first stop on our journey was Keewaydin Lake and the Keewaydin Lake Yurt.
2 yurts. And a yurt is kind of an elaborate tent.
A traditional yurt was a portable round tent covered with skins used as a dwelling by nomads in Central Asia. Modern yurts are permanently built on a wood platform covered with canvas and include all of the conveniences you might need.
We have a wood stove inside and bunk beds, and it has even a skylight in the yurt.
And a deck with a great view of the woods and the water.
So the reason why we lifted it up or put it on stilts here is because we get really deep snow here, and if it's not the snow on top that we have to worry about, it's the snow pushing in from the sides. So you'll notice that the snow will just fall down on the sides and it won't push on the yurt and cave it in for us. So it's kind of a nice little design. We have to do it. Put it on stilts up here in the UP. It's just kind of a unique experience to stay in a yurt. Not many people have stayed in a yurt before, and I think everybody should try it once.
And try it we did. It was cozy, clean, and comfortable. And I wouldn't have had any problem spending the rest of the day on the deck sipping margaritas. But we were on a lake, and a lake means fishing. You'll find an excellent landing and a dock a short distance from the yurt.
The only lake we can have motors on is Kewadin Lake. All these other lakes, no motors allowed.
I didn't have a motor or a boat, but conveniently enough, this lake comes with one. Well, about the time I said let's go fishing, it started to rain a little. And a little more. It kept on raining for quite some time. The rain did eventually stop and gave us just enough time to make a quick pass around the lake in the rowboat.
We provide a rowboat for each cabin. We have one at the Kewadin Yurt. We have another rowboat at the large cabin and small cabin. So each cabin at Craig Lake or yurts has a little rowboat. Lots of lakes at Craig Lake Park to explore, and they each offer something a little different. Teddy Lake, where we have a yurt, that's Panfish Lake. Craig Lake is probably one of my favorites here. It has lots of different species of fish. We have the muskie, northern pike, bass, crappie, lots of nice crappie. Walleye, you can keep walleye. Moving up to Clare Lake, which is a canoe portage from Craig Lake, and there's a campsite back in there. It's similar to Craig Lake in fishery, yet it's a little bit more difficult. It's like a half, 3/4 mile carry with your canoe. It's kind of like an untouched fishery. Similar species at what we have on Craig Lakes, yet not many people make it up there, so that'd be fantastic fishery. Moving over to Crooked Lake, bass, small and largemouth bass. You're really quite successful with fishing there. That the kids get a lot of positive reinforcement, and because they're catching a lot of fish there. Kewadin Lake, walleye, panfish.
Well, we didn't have much time, and scouting around the lake in a rowboat, well, takes time. We did manage to hook up with a couple of lunker sunfish, but nothing to put in the pan.
Isn't it cute?
But that was okay. I've learned over the years to have a backup plan. It was time to roll back to our new home away from home, build a fire, and throw on a couple of New York strips. dessert, a campfire, the night sky, and the sound of loons talking to each other across Keewaydin Lake.
This is a really special place at night. It is so quiet, no lights. You can't hear the road. All you can hear are the birds singing and the loons calling at night. I mean, loons are really kind of special at night. They make different sounds. And when I've been camping up here, it's just been, that's just fantastic. We don't hear another sound except for the woods. I mean, we're so far away from the roads, you don't hear another sound except for what is happening normally.
And there's not many places better to sit and listen to the night than in a yurt with a flickering fire and a view of the night sky. For me, one of the best parts of camping is the morning. For some reason, coffee has an entirely different appeal when I can smell it brewing outdoors. Mixed with the morning air, the sounds, and the anticipation of the day to come. I think breakfast has that same effect. Steak and eggs is great anytime, anywhere, but it's just a little bit better when you're cooking outside. It's not easier, not fancier, just better. Follow that up with a day of outdoors, and it's hard to beat. On today's agenda, a hike around Craig Lake to check out the newly built suspension bridge, parts of which had to be flown in by helicopter. But first, we decided to take a drive into another small secluded lake not far from our yurt, just to see what it looked like and maybe throw a few casts. When someone talks about taking the road less traveled, this is it. At the end of the road is a small, very secluded UP lake known as Thomas Lake.
One of my favorite lakes is Thomas Lake. It's in Craig Lake Park. The bass fishery is just fantastic in there. But it's catch and release. So again, make sure you look at all the fishing regulations before you come, because there's catch and release on northern pike, muskie, and bass. You can keep walleye and certainly panfish. If you're looking for a day experience hike, I would suggest walking around the Craig Lake. It's about 3.5 hours during bug season. It's 4.5 hours during most of the summer. The trail is pretty rugged. It's just fantastic. I had an interpreter from the Porcupine Mountains and an interpreter from Tequamana Falls here one day. We were walking along the trail and just past the north of the cabins. They both stopped, and they just stood around looking at the woods like they'd never seen this type of woods before. And I think it's because there's not a lot of deer browse in that area, and so you have hemlock and cedar that are regenerating, and the forest looks completely different than what you would see in the rest of the UP, and they both stopped and commented about it without being prompted.
The scenery is indeed breathtaking, and a great way to see a lot of it is to hike the Craig Lake Loop Trail. Our destination, the new suspension bridge dubbed Little Mac.
Just last fall, we built a new suspension bridge across the Pashiki River. So it's really pretty unique, worth the walk just to go look at this bridge. Takes you about 3.5, 4 hour walk, pretty rugged terrain, but you get to see this really cool suspension bridge over a river in the middle of nowhere. This bridge, it was pretty unique because with a suspension bridge, it'll sag in the center if you don't have counterweight. And so the only way they could get the counterweight was concrete, and they actually had a helicopter flying concrete back and forth from a staging area away from the park, and he was carrying buckets of concrete and one after another. It was a huge endeavor to get a helicopter out here and fly it to all this concrete out there, but you can't even tell there's concrete out there, and it's just the bridge looks great.
The hike there provides a great overview of the scenery you can expect to see throughout Craig Lake State Park.
A 36-inch pike. It almost pulled me out of the boat. It was probably this big or bigger.
Yeah.
That big.
We have 2 cabins on Craig Lake, and actually they're from Fred Miller of Miller Brewing Company. He had this fancy lodge type cabin where we can sleep 14 people, have a big stone fireplace, another wood stove in there. He needed somebody to stay up here to take care of his big investment up here, and so he built this caretaker's cabin, a smaller cabin. It's where there's 1 bedroom, another great room with a wood stove and kitchen table and chairs. There is another small little bedroom where it's just got 2 beds in there. My recommendation in the fall and early spring when the weather's cool, it's a little easier to warm up a smaller cabin than this huge lodge cabin we have. If you have accessibility issues, we'll allow you to get back and drive to the cabins. But if you're not, it's about a 2-mile hike. Most people prefer to carry their gear in a canoe and just launch it right into the lake and paddle that distance, so you don't have to carry it on your back. The North Country Trail runs through this park, and so we have some campsites along that North Country Trail. We partner with that group, and they help us clear the trails for us. So it's really kind of a strong trail system. So if you're looking through maybe going from Craig Lake to McCormick Wilderness area, we have some campsites along the way, and then you could experience the McCormick Wilderness area, which is just a short distance away, and that's where they relocated the moose. So lots of places to explore. We have a state park reservation system. If you made a reservation for a campsite in any state park, that's the same system. You would go out, you can type in michigan.gov/Craig Lake, all one word, and it would take you to the Craig Lake website, and then you could click on reservations.
Craig Lake State Park, with its cabins and yurts, is truly one of the UP's great getaway destinations. But it's the remoteness and the serenity of its backcountry campsites that draws many people to the park.
We have lots of campsites here at Craig Lake Park, although it's not your typical state park campground. It's more of a backcountry experience where you would put a backpack on, or the people from the parking lot here, they had a canoe filled with all their gear with some wheels, and so they were able to wheel it right down into the lake and then find the campsites around the lake.
It's not a spot where you can just drive up and pop open the camper and go. You have to hike to it or portage your canoe to it. It's a nice secluded spot to get away. We saw one canoer yesterday came by the campsite. Sometimes we'll see 4 or 5 groups with canoes and kayaks that come up and hit the lake, but a lot of people stay right here in Craig Lake. But to get over to Crooked Lake or some of the surrounding lakes, that's even better to get out and get away. So it's very nice. You know, we had rain all day yesterday, probably 6-7 hours, and it was still a great trip.
Yeah, we have some campsites pretty near the head, right at the point here at Craig Lake, where people can just carry a short distance. They're 1/5 of a mile, carry their gear in. But those people that kind of want to really get away from it all, they can portage to different lakes, or there's campsites all around the lake, and you'll see a little fire ring. Sometimes we have a picnic table, sometimes we don't, but it's just kind of a wilderness camping experience. It's just kind of a more wilderness setting, and it's not hard-packed campsites. It's really kind of, you're in the middle of nowhere.
Well, we've come up here every year since my kids were little, and I'd rotate my son, then my daughter, and my son, my daughter every other year, and the fishing's been great this time of year. You come up and get the bass on their beds, and it's really good to take kids up because, you know, they get a lot of positive reinforcement every time they cast. Just about they catch a fish. The bugs are a little bit bad on the way to the lake, but once you get set up on the campsites, the wind pretty much settles the bug issue down, and it's one of the prettiest spots in the UP, I think.
Our journey into the park will continue next week as we canoe into one of Craig Lake's backcountry campsites for a couple days of fishing, camping, canoeing, and absolute peace and quiet. Well, that's it for tonight. If you'd like to keep tabs on what's coming up on Discovering or see where we've been, you can join us on Facebook or go to 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Discovering.